Thank you for joining us for this afternoon session called We Secured the Bag, hearing from EPA Grant Recipients. And with this, I'd like to turn it over to Jose, who will introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Laura. To everyone there, thank you for joining us today. We have around 76 people connected. That's great. I'm looking forward to this kind of panel because I always love when people share their experiences with others, and these kind of activities are great. And again, I don't want to keep you waiting there. I want to introduce our first speaker from Appalachian Voices, Robert Kell, the program manager. He's ready to start this great panel presentation.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's exciting to be with you again. I'm Robert Kell, the New Economy Program Manager with Appalachian Voices. I'm going to actually turn off my video to ensure I don't lose you during this, but I'm here. You'll hear my voice and see my slides. So 10 minutes is not a lot of time. I'm going to move very quickly. The flow will look something like the why for our grant, the how we applied, and the start to what we're doing with it. And I'll close with a summary slide for takeaways. Appalachian Voices celebrated its 25th anniversary in 2022. We envision an Appalachia with healthy ecosystems and resilient local economies that allow communities to thrive. Our organization brings people together to protect the land, air, and water of Central and Southern Appalachia and advance a just transition to a generative and equitable clean energy economy. This initiative that I'm going to be talking with you today was to create a comprehensive framework known as the Coal Community Resiliency Planning Model and Toolkit. The model and toolkit will serve as an adaptable guide for 5 coal communities in Virginia to navigate and respond to the multifaceted challenges posed by economic shifts, environmental concerns, and the need to plan for climate change. Coal mining has been the lifeblood of the 5-county project area for generations, providing thousands of jobs and economic prosperity at the industry's peak. State-provided data says that between 2015 and 2020, approximately 1,078 jobs were lost from mining and related industries across this region, a 25% decline. The long-term industry projection for mining in Southwest Virginia does not show improvement. The region is expected to suffer a staggering 21% further decline in mining employment by 2028. Launched in 2015 with a series of community listening sessions, the New Economy program, based out of our Norton, Virginia office, works with residents, governments, and institutions to diversify the coal economy with 4 key elements of community engagement, economic diversification, land restoration, and clean energy. With these 4 principles in mind, we created the innovative mine reclamation model that really centers place-based strategies, community buy-in, and environmental stewardship. And you can see that on your left here. Additionally, our New Economy Field Program and Field Coordinator facilitate a monthly community meeting through our New Economy Network, or NIN. NIN is an open forum for community groups and individuals engaged in economic development and transition work in the 7 coalfield counties. Participants in the New Economy Network agree on 3 common principles that guide the conversations and actions taken as a network. Currently, NIN is exploring absentee land ownership, entrepreneurship, and county land record infrastructure. A year later, we launched the Solar Work Group of Southwest Virginia, which has leveraged additional public and private funding to develop 15 megawatts of solar, start a solar apprenticeship program with local community colleges, launched the Solar Finance Fund, which as of 2022 is capitalized at $4 million, and partnered with the Virginia Department of Energy to design and secure a DOE Renewables Advancing Clean Energy Resilience program that in its creation will help create energy resiliency metrics and case studies for this region. Over the last 8 years and working across dozens of communities, our new economy program has leveraged more than $7 million in various funding sources, including the Abandoned Mineland Economic Revitalization Program, or AMLR, Virginia Brownfield Program, the Appalachian Regional Commission's Power Initiative. In our ongoing collaboration with the Dane Community Association, projects include turning a brownfield site into a modern campground, repurposing a steam building into a workforce hub, and building a world-class mountain bike trails. This work and our long-term relationships with localities and our technical assistance has built deep trust and supported the creation of community associations that drive the work and comprehensive master planning to guide these efforts. So this slide really is a demonstration of the types of affected environmental justice issues tied to legacy extraction and the ways in which these communities experience these in unique ways. Although each community has a unique relationship with these issues, proximity, economies, and climate change tie the communities together. For example, flooding in the region has intensified as severe storms encounter degraded land, lacking vegetation, and creek and stream banks weakened by erosion and debris from extractive industries. A 2015 report by the U.S. Department of Forestry observed that climate models forecast Central Appalachia to experience 2 to 4 additional days of heavy rain greater than 3 inches, and precipitation annually by the end of the century. So that's the why in the context of the communities we work in. So we decided to apply for the Environmental Justice Collaborative Problem Solving Grant last April. And before we did that, we saw the NOFO, we took it to our community partners, and we asked them if they would be interested in applying for this grant. And all 5 partners said yes, all 5 localities said yes. So between January and February, we held monthly bi-monthly meetings, so twice a month meetings with our partners to ensure that we were moving our grant application step in step with them. Additionally, we worked with the Environmental Protection Network, and I highly recommend folks reach out to EPN. They provided a template for the EJCPS grant, and that was a tremendous support for our efforts to move really quickly this NOFO to an application. We had 4 months to do this, and those resources were tremendous. So a little bit about our project. Our place-based project, you can see here, our office is in basically the center of Virginia's coalfield counties. And these 5 communities are our partners. And our hope is to be able to do these 7 activities here. Let me close this so I can read this. So building a resiliency planning model, a toolkit for implementation, integrating this new model and toolkit into other redevelopment initiatives. So not starting from scratch, but infusing it with new ideas from listening and from resources driven toward climate change, building capacity in these localities, infusing, like I said, redevelopment model with adaptation and resilience, supporting catalytic and community-based projects. And in fact, over half of our funding is going towards community project designs. Each of these localities will get about $60,000 in project design funding. And all of this is for the long-term sustainable redevelopment of these communities. And this is just another way of saying our top 4 goals aligned with the goals of the EJCPS program itself. Engage the local communities and stakeholders to map their communities, utilize our own model to build catalytic projects, create a toolkit that can replicate this work across coal communities, and build environmental justice advocates and community capacity so that we can address ongoing issues. This is our award timeline. I wanted to provide it so you can just get a sense, right? So NOFO came out in January. We applied in April. We got notice of funding in October. We had about 3 months of negotiations with EPA around our proposal. We had to cut some of the things out of that proposal that EPA wouldn't pay for, like food at our listening sessions. So we went to the Environmental Defense Fund and got extra support to pay for food and community stipends. Every community member who comes to one of our listening sessions gets a $25 stipend. We just launched our first sessions this month. We'll have a second round of listening sessions in August. We have a big planning half-day event in October. We're going to launch a series of webinars all of next year around climate change and redevelopment. We're going to have a project design session in March, and that's where that $60,000 will go to actualize those designs and the final toolkit by the end of next year. So how are we telling communities about these listening sessions? We have a beautiful comms team, and they've created all of these flyers. But in addition to flyers that we're hanging up in each community, we bought community yard signs. So we have these yard signs. Each community got about 20 of these to put up. We've also been advertising in the local papers and social media. Again, food and a stipend has really encouraged folks to come out. Here is an example of the 3 activities that we're doing at our first, or the 2 activities and a guide for participation at our first session. So we spent about 20 minutes having folks map out what change has looked like in terms of economic development, environmental, and community culture. And then we map those things out. There's actually a map here of like one of the communities, Clenchco, and these are massive posters. So folks are actually drawing on these, using sticky notes to note where like flooding is happening, where energy burdens are high, where assets and liabilities are. And then we have this guide for participation, which is really fundamental. And, you know, just to read these out here, because I think they've really helped create a space where folks feel valued. You know, your voice is needed. We're making space for all voices. We seek to understand each other. We're going to resist crosstalk across the room. We accept permission to be messy. And I'm going to add to this one, and permission to be bold. And we stick to the time limit, which I'm not doing right now. But here are some pictures from our first 2 listening sessions, one in Dungannon, Virginia, where we had 34 people come, and then one in Clenchco, Virginia, where we had 41 people come. And we had folks define resilience, and then we've listed up on some sticky notes some of the things that talked about with change. Here's our ultimate roadmap. First listening sessions, we are working
1-minute warning.
really diligently to include these in the EPA change grant that a lot of us know about, and then those. But some of the ideas that have come up so far, this is an old segregated African-American school in the community of Clenchco that they want to make into a resiliency hub with solar battery storage, a playground, skate park that they want to build. In Dungannon, folks talked about how hot it gets on the sidewalks, so they want to plant trees. And they also have a community center that they are hoping to turn into a resiliency hub. So my big takeaways: build relationships with your communities, build community infrastructure like community associations that can leverage resources and create sustainable pathways for long-term development. Make your grant visual, tell your story. Not just don't tell your story, show your story and your need. Most of the graphics you saw today in my presentation were actually included in our EJCPS grant. So we had graphics, pictures, and words. Use resources like the EPN, the EJ screening tool, and other regional partners. Create the voices, center the voices that are most directly affected. Stack funding now and as you apply for these big major federal grants, because they really help demonstrate your fiscal management and readiness. Start early, establish regular check-ins, pay your community members for their time, feed them, and then use your EPA project coordinator for everything. And shout out to Grace, who's been really great for us. So I'll stop there. Our slides are coming to you all, and we have questions later. So thank you.
Thank you, Robert. This was great. Laura? Let me then, great presentation. I'm looking forward to the questions, but let me just, for this, to save time, let me introduce the next speaker or speakers, Lorna Rosenberg and Michelle Nakarati Chapkis from the Eastern Region Healthy Buildings will speak to us, or the Women for Health Environment will speak to us. Lorna, I don't want to take more time. And Michelle, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for having us here today. It's a pleasure to be with you. And I know we only have about 10 or 12 minutes, so we'll skip the bios and we'll go straight to the presentation. I'm Michelle with my colleague Lorna. I'm with Women for a Healthy Environment. I'm based here in Pittsburgh. Lorna is based in Philadelphia. So as you can hear, we cover both ends of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Women for a Healthy Environment's mission is to achieve equitable lives free of environmental hazards. And we do that through advocacy. We do that through community-based programming, and we also do that with the latest scientific research and information that we have available to us. So our vision is a world where everyone has access to a healthy environment. And this particular grant that we received from the EPA really focused on one of our three program areas. Our program areas focus on creating healthy homes, healthy schools, and healthy early learning centers, the childcare centers. And if you think about all three of those program areas, the commonality between all of them is it's spaces where children spend their days. And so we want to create a healthy environment for children to learn, to grow, and to thrive in. And so if we took our early learning initiative and had Lorna launch that for us in Philadelphia, and this is really where we're keeping children healthy and safe from environmental toxins in their environment, as well as the staff who work in those spaces, thinking about it from an occupational health exposure as well. So we really launched this initiative, and our work is focused in environmental justice communities. Those are the priority areas where we do all of our work. And you'll hear about how that work was happening in Philadelphia with the support and assistance of Erin Sullivan from the EPA. And so I want to give a shout out to Erin, who's been really, really helpful and a pleasure to work with throughout this initiative. And we're closing in on our 2-year grant here. So with the next slide, please. Just to give you a sense of the project goals and objectives, we identified environmental justice communities in Philadelphia where we were going to concentrate our outreach and effort. Hunting Park, Cobb's Creek, Strawberry Mansion, and Point Breeze. Lorna will describe to you how she has built collaborations with the early learning providers, the directors and staff in those spaces who are caring for and educating young children, and supporting agencies in the city. So this was an opportunity to really expand the work that we envisioned when we put forth the proposal to EPA, and it became something much larger and greater with outreach to members of the community that we didn't anticipate. And so we're really fortunate in that regard. And Lorna, I will turn it over to you and you can describe some of that work specifically.
Thank you, Michelle. Good afternoon, everyone, and hello. It's a pleasure to be here and address my colleagues, past and present, and also for you to understand how EPA's funding really makes a difference on the ground and is put to very good use. So here we go. In this grant that we received 2 years ago, we created the Healthy Childcare Champions program to reach out to the 4 communities that Michelle mentioned in Philly. The 4 aspects of our program are the Eco Healthy Childcare Champions program, which includes a one-on-one visit with childcare providers, a gift bag of products to get them started on their way to a healthier environment. The Children's Environmental Health Network, our partner in this, who has the Eco Healthy endorsement and online training. And all those items together involve and include someone as a healthy childcare champion. We also created an IAQ, indoor air quality study, with 8 Healthy Child Care Champion participants on the efficacy of air filters in reducing PM 2.5 levels in childcare. We collected empirical data for this grant also on the impact of climate change on children's health and staff. And Healthy Child Care Partnership is another, the 4th aspect of this grant, which is a statewide partnership group that assesses childcare needs for training and regulatory updates for healthy childcare environments. So what are our accomplishments? There are a lot, and we're really excited to share them with you. 90 healthy childcare champions are now in existence in the Philadelphia area. We've created and formed webinars that we've invited numerous folks beyond the 90 healthy childcare champions to participate in. with focus on healthy summertime activities and keeping you safe during the summer in childcare, and also on indoor and outdoor air quality. October 25th of last year, Regional Administrator Ortiz came to the Ken Crest Children's Environmental Health Day and spoke and read stories to the children about why is cocoa orange, about healthy outdoor air quality. We also had on March 23rd, with a partnership with Esperanza, a Hispanic organization in Philadelphia, a Spanish and English eco-healthy training with 50 participants. We've done 2 radon seminars for early learning providers. We've finalized an indoor air quality child care center report as part of our quality assurance project plan. An opportunity I never knew I would have when I worked at EPA to create one, but so I did. An outreach to at least 5,000 early learning providers across the Commonwealth on environmental health issues through other kinds of documents and tip sheets and announcements. And we worked very closely with the Pennsylvania Office of Child Development and Early Learning for the distribution of information regarding safer alternatives for disinfectant products, with an emphasis on the Safer Choice label, EPA's Safer Choice label, and that reaches about 8,000 childcare providers throughout the Commonwealth. There were wonderful grant offshoots from our work on this grant. One is that we were very lucky to receive a 2023 Green Building United, that's the local green building organization in the Delaware Valley, community groundbreaker award for our work in the city. We also had a proclamation from the Philadelphia Mayor's Office for Children's Environmental Health Day on October 25th. We worked very closely with the Penn Medicine, their Philadelphia Research for Child Care's Environmental Health. We're a community partner with them on that, and we were granted $30,000 for a shade study, which we've finished with childcare in the environmental justice neighborhoods, looking at the impact of heat on childcare play activity outside. You'll hear more about that in a bit. We've distributed 20 shade structures and air quality flags, another EPA program through the Penn Medicine group. We've had a donation, this was fabulous and very exciting for us, a donation of 88,000 Purell cleaning products and disinfectants that went to the Philadelphia Department of Health and was distributed to childcare providers throughout the city. It was a full, honest to goodness, tractor trailer load. There were in 2024, there was a presentation at the Society of Toxicology International meeting in Salt Lake on this work. And we've made at least 15 presentations to regional, state, and other organizations. So I mentioned the indoor air quality study in childcare. That had 4 aims. I'll go through one of them and then you can read the rest on your own. But most importantly was to provide a way for childcare centers to understand the quantity of PM 2.5 in their centers and how it influences the quality of the indoor air in their centers. And then I will cover aim number 2, which is it turned out when we were about to launch this study that the City of Philadelphia Department of Health, they were giving away the Metafair air filters to childcare throughout the city and also to schools to help them with indoor air quality as a result of COVID. And we were pretty much looking at how effective those air filters were. And that was the big focal point of our work. And the results of this study were that that PM 2.5 levels averaged were at 6 milligrams per cubic meter, and it was reduced down to 1 or non-detectable when demonstrating the effectiveness of the air filters. So consequently, they're very effective at reducing PM 2.5 particulate matter. Also, the units that we put in place to do the monitoring are units that also create something or measure something called indoor air quality, which is similar to outdoor air quality. So it's a relative scale of indoor air quality that combines carbon dioxide and particulates and other things. And it's kind of a general measure, but that also reduced from 23.79 down to 4.13. So the results of using an air filter were really extraordinary. And we were thrilled that the city spent the money on these air filters and that childcare was able to take advantage of that. Our recommendations as a result of the study were that folks should run their air filters constantly when the children are in centers to be able to optimize the quality of the indoor air, make sure that the filters are replaced, and considering when there's cooking happening, maybe many of you are aware that there are a lot of particulates that are given off when cooking happens. So the air filter near the cooking area will help reduce those exposures. Invest in sensors if people want to continue measuring the effectiveness of their air filter, and then look to implement, sorry, come back. One more, okay, no, not the right one, here we go. Make sure that you reduce source pollution and also that there's proper and adequate ventilation. So, short story is air purifiers really work. Unlike when you plug in your refrigerator, it gets cold. You plug in your oven, it gets hot. When you plug in your air purifier, it really does work. And for improved indoor air quality, particularly in childcare. And then the shade study that looked at the impact of heat and limited shade on children and staff. And we found out that when you have a shade structure, for outdoor play in Philadelphia, particularly where there's often not a lot of shade in urban childcare, that it reduces the surface temperature and kids will stay out and play longer, up to 15 minutes longer. So that's also good news for summertime. And with that, I believe we are at the end. That's what our graphs look like when we did our results and data collection. And we are focused on making sure that more shade is happening in Philadelphia. Oh, I'm sorry.
So as you can see here, this showed that there was a decrease in temperature with this shade structure, and that allowed for children to be outdoors for a longer period of time during the summertime to get more exercise and more time playing outside. And so the shade structure, you know, the city of Philadelphia has put together mapping and described the heat islands that exist within the city. And so this really took upon the opportunity to look at the heat islands and make an impact and difference with the shade structures. And so as a result of that, there have been more requests now from the childcare centers across the region in which Lorna is working to install more of these. And they're fairly simple pop-up canopy that is portable. We can take it down in the winter time, and it provides the shade cover that's needed. And with that, Lorna, there you are. Yeah, here's your last slide. So here's
our last slide. Here we are.
Here's Lorna's contact information that you can reach out to her and ask her about any specific questions that you might have about the indoor air quality and the shade structure grants that were, or projects that were done and the results. Lorna, any words?
Yeah, I will say one more thing, and that is that if there's opportunities for funding at a longer period of time, that's beneficial to a project like this so that we can cover more territory and engage more child care providers.
Thank you to EPA. We did get a lot of work done in 2 years, and it was an amazing grant with a lot of great next steps, and sustainability is a part of our work, and we will continue the work into our new fiscal year.
Thank you very much. That was a very, very impressive outcome of a great project. I mean, I'm looking forward to the questions. Just stick around, please. Our third group of the afternoon will be Sydney Adams and Anthony Clements from the Business Development Corporation of the Northern Panhandle of West Virginia.
Yes, and Juan, Garret, and Jacob Keeney. So we got quite a crew for you all today. But yes, my name is Sydney Adams. I'm a project officer here in the Brownfields program at Region 3. And I'm going to quickly go into the overarching program here we offer at EPA, and then I will hand it off to the stars of our show, Juan, Jacob, and Anthony here, our wonderful, wonderful, wonderful grantees, who will give you a better scope of what our program does and what is doing in the future. And let me share my screen. That's going to be very helpful. Okay, awesome. All right. So, of course, if we're going to go into the brownfield program, we got to step all the way back to step one. What is a brownfield? A brownfield, as defined by EPA, is any property that has or potentially has environmental contamination that inhibits the redevelopment or reuse of a property. When I'm joking with my friends, I go, they're less spicy Superfund sites. And it's a bit different from the Superfund program in that it's more of a volunteer-based program. It's the community doing the work for the community. There's not really too much of a regulatory leg there. It's more so community-based. And this can look like a diverse array of sites. So anything from a gas station on the corner of your main street in your town to an old abandoned steel site. So we got 2 steel sites right here. Not sure if you can see my mouse, but an abandoned box factory that burnt down, an abandoned Kroger, an abandoned metal metal crafting site, gas stations. There's an old hospital, an old rail yard, yada, yada, yada. It can go on. And the brownfield program can take a lot of different faces across our region. And how does EPA help with that? We have the EPA Brownfield Program, which provides funding and support to communities looking to combat brownfield challenges. So that often looks like from us grant funding. And we offer that in the form of assessment, cleanup, multipurpose, revolving loan fund, and job training grants. Assessment grants help communities characterize contamination or the lack of contamination at a site to make sites more set up for future investment. Removing that roadblock of contamination, as well as we provide cleanup funding to remove that contamination, revolving loan fund grants that provide discounted or low interest rate loans for remediation, and job training grants that offer communities the opportunity to educate their community in environmental workforce skills, including HAZWOPER 40 classes. We also offer targeted brownfield assessments, which are phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessments, completely free of charge to communities for specific brownfield sites, and technical assistance in the form of economic market surveys or site visioning, etc. Again, all free to the community. And you're going to see, as our 2 grantees here speak for a bit, there's immense social, economic, and environmental incentives to remediate brownfields. So yes, we are the EPA. We love to save the planet. And yes, there are a lot of great things behind brownfield cleanup, but there are also a massive societal and economic plus from these projects. So you'll see the elimination of eyesores, increases of property values, increases in jobs, increases in tax bases, removal of food deserts, increased transportation for communities, and the list will go on, and it's a pretty diverse list of outcomes. And so you're going to see a couple of those today. So I'm going to hand it off to our 2 grantees, and we'll start with Juan Garret, who's the Executive Director of Northside Industrial Development Company. And then we're going to go to Anthony Clements and Jacob Keeney, the co-executive directors of the Business Development Corporation of the Northern Panhandle. So off to you, Juan. Here you go.
All right, and good afternoon, and thank you everybody for joining. I hope you're enjoying your day. The sun's shining today here in the city of Pittsburgh, where the Northside Industrial Development is located at, and we do business under Riverside Center for Innovation. The primary focus of us is to take entrepreneurs and utilize to help grow disadvantaged communities that have been disinvested in decades in our region here, and using this EPA grant to really beef up and include equity and inclusion using through this program. So on the next slide here, you'll see a photo of one of the projects, the anchor project that we were able to do in the Hill District located in the city of Pittsburgh. The Hill District right here is the pillar of Pittsburgh's Black culture. And in the past, you can see where the New Granada Square was. That was the place where many minority and Black artists and performance artists had performed during the 60s and 50s and 60s, actually, before moving on to Harlem. People like Duke Ellington and Lena Horne had stopped at the New Granada Square. When this project, when that theater closed in 1970, and as you all know as well, in the late 70s and the early 80s, the steel mills in Pittsburgh had closed, like with many of our Rust Belt cities, and then blight just came in. And then there was urban renewal plans here in the city, where it's taken portions of the Hill District and really decimated that community from other portions of the city, and where we weren't able to benefit from economic development. So more recently, on the next slide, you could see the New Granada Square apartments. This was a development of an entire block. That block is prepared, numbers are probably changing, but a $45 million development project for the entire block. But this potential project here, the New Granada Square, is a $16 million development with its partners with the Hill CDC and CHN Housing Development Partners. As you can see, they developed 24 one-bedroom units and 16-bedroom apartments, which is the affordability to make sure that the community is able, during this economic and community plans that they have, is to not gentrify that community. So we need to start off with affordable housing to make sure that that gentrification doesn't happen typically in these communities when you do economic development. So we've been able to partner with many of our local community and economic development organizations throughout the region. And we want to make sure we do our brownfield assessment money that aligns with the plans of those community groups. And so we've been able to work with probably well over 20-something community groups since we've been able to receive this EPA dollars here. And so on the next slide, one of the focuses is how do we make sure that we continue to build community with many of these development partners. And so with this whole new development project with the New Granada Square, the New Granada Theater that's in, the University of Pittsburgh has been able to put it in a community engagement center. Really, it's taken some of the university classes and projects into these low-income communities that can offer these types of training programs to help the communities create a better workforce by offering free programs and a place for the community to come venture in. And then on the next slide, you can see we have been able to put in the top right photo, you can see it says F&B, First National Bank Tower. That was the former Mellon Arena site, and right across the street from it now, if you've ever been to Pittsburgh and you like hockey, it is now the PP Paints building. And so the Penguins and First National Bank created a community benefits agreement, which is called a CSIP, and they have made commitments in this community where you can see Marimba Malines, who is the executive director of the Hill CDC, and they really had many meetings to really come up with a really great CSIP that they committed to working in this low-income community. So it's creating the impact in many community meetings that we all attended as well to make sure. In the CSIP, RCI was pointed out to help with entrepreneurs to benefit from this. And so as we start looking onto the next slide, this will give you a couple of highlights from the CSIP that they've been able to do. CSIP is the Community Collaboration and Implementation Plan, which is really the same as the community benefits, which typically low-income communities help benefit so that when they do big investments, that the equity and inclusion isn't considered included in that. So F&B has right now already committed $5 million, has already invested $5 million into a gap lending program through the Hill CDC. They've also been able to invest $1.1 million to the Hill District's Federal Credit Union, and that is probably one of the last few minority-owned lending institutions throughout the country. And last time I checked, there was only about 20 that was throughout the United States. So they made a commitment to keep the minority ownership in the Federal Credit Union, and we do refer some of our businesses there. And just recently, RCI, we partnered with the Penguins and the First National Bank to do a small business development camp. We were able to enroll over 40 small businesses based upon race and gender, but based upon revenue structure. And you can see some of the winners here that have been mentioned. We had a $25,000 winner, One Return, which is a high-end composting female firm. And then the other firms here, as you can see, they're coming through this small business development program. And we continue to work with them to really expand and do their businesses throughout the region. And how do they participate back in? On the F&B tower, they have a goal that they're trying to reach. I believe it was 20% of minority participation. And so we've been able to work with the developers there, BPG, to unbundle those contracts to make sure that small businesses that are diverse are able to participate in these developments. And so on our last slide here, this is just some of the work that we've been able to do. And we have to give a lot of this credit because of the EPA program that we've been able to secure for the last 10 years or so of the things that we're able to do. So our organization has created over 5,000 jobs, generated $204 million in annual output to the region. And 3 out of 4 of our businesses have been profitable, which it is really incredible for being able to take these types of funds and invest in these communities and continue to build equity and inclusion within the region using the EPA. So I do want to thank the EPA and continue to thank them for the programs that they are able to put into the community. And that's, so we will turn it over to our next speakers. Or Sydney.
Sure. Thank you, Juan.
All right.
Thank you so much. And yeah, so I'll hand it off to Jacob and Anthony over there.
Good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity of being here and discussing the projects that we had here at TS&T. For those of you who don't know, my name is Anthony Clements, and I'm joined here with my counterpart, Jacob Keeney. We are the co-executive directors here at the BDC. The BDC, or Business Development Corporation of the Northern Panhandle, is the local economic development org for the top 2 counties of West Virginia. Those would be Brooke and Hancock counties. We've been in existence for about 30 years whenever there was a consolidation of multiple organizations such as ourselves. The funny thing about our 2 counties are because they're incredibly small, we felt the need to come together as a community to consolidate many of the county and citywide EDAs like ourselves. Otherwise, we would not be able to share in a lot of the resources and come together as a community. We wanted to pinpoint the TS&T or Taylor Smith and Taylor Pottery site for a couple reasons. First, it has been a project of ours dating back to about 2012 or 2011, when the BDC first started down the route of redeveloping brownfields. Secondly, a lot of the characteristics you find throughout this project is part and parcel to many of the other successes the BDC has had since then. For those of you who don't know, our area has been plagued with brownfields for quite some time. And back in 2011, when the BDC was about 10, 11, 12-ish years old, we were just starting to get our feet out from under us or our feet on the ground and trying to figure out what our long-term plan was. At that point, we did a study funded through a federal agency to determine what the best use of our time was. How could we best affect the local economy? And what it found was our area that was known for steel, for pottery, for glass manufacturing, we had an existence, an overabundance of brownfields. They found that these brownfields were the low-hanging fruit, the areas in which we could most focus on to make the biggest bang for our buck. And since 2011, the success on this site has spurred successes all over the place in our 2 counties, not just the BDC's efforts, but through a lot of our partners. It's what spurred industrial access road funding. It's what spurred revolving loan fund for a local municipality. It's what spurred for some of our partners who aren't even in our EPA region to acquire community-wide assessment grants. So with that being said, we'd like to dive a little deeper into the TS&T on the next slide here.
All right, so a little bit about the TS&T pottery. The TS&T pottery was built in the little town of Chester long before it was incorporated. It's the northernmost municipality in the state of West Virginia. It currently has a population of about 2,200 residents. Before the municipality was incorporated, there was a pottery constructed in 1899, which resulted in the incorporation of the local municipality in 1907. For the past 100 years or so, this pottery, known as the TS&T pottery or Taylor Smith and Taylor pottery, has been pumping out all sorts of pottery products through the ages. We have some of these shown here on the screen, from pastel ware to formal dining ware. They even produced toilet sets, porcelain toilets and toilet seats in the early 30s. As that facility expanded through the normal progression of, the market through the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, this facility underwent significant changes both to its facility and the land use. It started as a relatively small 2-acre site with clay silos and a couple kilns, and it rapidly expanded to include much more kilns, significant underground bunkers full of clay and various other products. It even included a local dump site for the pottery seconds or the shards that were produced as a byproduct. So the facility was purchased by Anchor Hocking in 1972, and it kept producing pottery until 1981. After 81, the property ended up going into public hands. For some local residents acquired the property, several different residents. And what happened was the pottery went into a state of disrepair. They stopped producing pottery. It was starting to be used for storage of various materials. And early in the 90s, the facility was in such a decayed state that there was actually some public health concerns related to the facility that warranted US EPA coming in and doing an assessment. As a result of that assessment, a consent decree was entered into between the original owner of the property and the EPA to work hand in hand to kind of clean up some of the identified areas of the property which were blighted. So on the next slide here, we'll show kind of a photo of what it looked like in 2011, just before the BDC acquired this property. And for the better part of our involvement in this project, this facility has always been pretty much compromised. It's been abandoned, it's been partially demolished. There was a lot of concern about the community accessing the site because there was no fencing. It's located immediately adjacent to a large residential neighborhood with kids playing all around. So there was a lot of community concern for the public safety and welfare of the community. Like I mentioned, the pottery collapsed on itself over years of deterioration and unuse. And it was something that the BDC had looked at as a potential redevelopment site. As Anthony had mentioned, our region has a vast array of brownfield sites, and our goal is to, for the most part, bring jobs back to the community that were formerly lost in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So we identified this site, and we worked with our community partners to acquire the site. We worked with US EPA to ensure that any of the former liability associated with the consent decree was waived on the BDC's part, and it allowed us the opportunity to apply for TBA assessment dollars and cleanup grants. The BDC was successfully awarded 2 cleanup grants through the course of 10 years to work towards cleaning up this site. Some of the issues that we experienced on this site in particular was soil contamination. As I mentioned previously, the site prior to its expansion was used as a pottery dump. So a lot of the glaze in the pottery process contained lead in the early days. And as such, they basically built foundations over top of it. So during the demolition process, we uncovered troves of old dump sites with lead glazed pottery. And we're able to work through all of that using a US EPA cleanup grant. So next slide, please.
Anthony and Jacob, I'm really sorry to cut in here, but we are at the top of the session, so we're going to have to close this meeting so that there's time for speaker checks for the next session. I know we didn't get through all of your presentation, but I do know that these slides will be made available after today's event. So again, apologies for that, but I do have to go ahead and close this session and move on to the next. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.